What would you do if the man who abandoned love for power suddenly had only weeks to live, then locked eyes with his ex at a bus stop, standing beside twin daughters he never knew existed? As the clock ticks, secrets unravel, and one final chance at redemption begins. But not everyone is ready to forgive. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe and like the video, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Make sure to watch this video till the end, because in the final moments you'll see the journey from an entirely new perspective. Now let's jump into the story. Julian Reed had everything most people dream about. Fast cars, tall buildings with his name on them, and a bank account that never ran dry. At just 40, he was one of the most powerful tech moguls on the East Coast. People respected him, feared him, and some even hated him. But very few knew him. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when the world stopped spinning for Julian. He sat in the sterile white office of Dr. Emery Khalid, staring at a glowing screen filled with strange shapes and shadows. His brain sliced in layers. The doctor's voice was steady, but distant, like it was coming from underwater. "You have a rare aggressive brain condition," Dr. Khalid said gently. "We estimate you have maybe 2 months. 3 at most." Julian didn't blink. The words didn't make sense. He ran a company that built artificial intelligence. He had meetings lined up for the next 6 months. He had a gala to attend that weekend. He didn't have time to die. Dr. Khalid continued, "We can begin comfort care soon. There's no cure, Julian. I'm so sorry." Julian stood slowly, like gravity had suddenly gotten heavier. His legs carried him out of the hospital, but his mind was stuck in that cold room. The echo of the word terminal followed him into the elevator. He didn't remember walking to his car, but there he was, gripping the steering wheel of his silver Mercedes like it was the only thing holding him to earth. He didn't drive home. He didn't even think. He just started moving, through traffic, past blinking crosswalks and honking taxis. New York blurred around him like someone had smeared the city with watercolors. Somewhere between Manhattan and Brooklyn, he slowed at a red light near the Grand Avenue bus stop. That's when he saw her. A woman stood there, holding the hands of 2 little girls, maybe 6 or 7. The woman wore a plain coat, her hair tied back in a messy braid. She looked tired but strong. Her back was straight. Her face turned just enough for him to see. His breath caught. It was Clara. Clara Jensen. 7 years ago, she had been the love of his life. A dancer, a dreamer. She was full of color and warmth in a world that had always been black and white. To him, they were supposed to get married. He had bought a ring, planned a proposal. But before any of that could happen, Julian had pushed her out of his life like she was nothing. He believed lies, told by the wrong people, and assumed the worst about the only person who ever truly cared about him. Without warning, without reason, he ended it. And Clara disappeared. And now here she was, standing on the sidewalk with 2 identical girls. The same eyes, same nose, the same tilt of the chin that Julian saw in the mirror every day. The light turned green, but Julian didn't move. A horn blared behind him, another. Still, he sat frozen. The girls laughed at something Clara said. One of them turned and looked directly at him. His heart stopped. That face. It was his. A tiny version of him, in pink sneakers and pigtails. The honking grew louder. Julian jerked forward and turned sharply, pulling over to the side of the road. He didn't care that he nearly hit a mailbox. He didn't even bother locking the car. He just ran. "Clara!" he called, his voice cracking as he reached the sidewalk. She turned, her expression changing from calm to terrified in an instant. She pulled the girls behind her like a lioness guarding her cubs. "Julian?" she asked, her voice a mixture of shock and fear. He stepped forward, barely breathing. Are they mine?" "Go away," she snapped. "Now's not the time." "Clara, please just tell me, are they—" "I said go away," she shouted. The girls looked confused. One of them clutched her mother's leg. The other peeked out with wide eyes. Julian knelt to their level, ignoring the pounding in his skull. "What's your name?" he asked softly. Clara stepped between them. "Don't talk to them." The bus pulled up, the door hissing open. Clara gathered the twins quickly, her jaw tight. "You made your choice 7 years ago, Julian. You don't get to walk back in now, not like this." "But I didn't know. And now you do. But it's too late." With that, she climbed aboard with her daughters. The bus pulled away, leaving Julian alone in the cold afternoon air. He stood there long after the bus was gone, watching the spot where it disappeared, like hoping it would come back in reverse time. But it didn't. All he had left was a fast heartbeat, a throbbing headache, and a name he hadn't said out loud in years. Clara, and 2 girls who just might be his daughters. Julian couldn't stop thinking about them. Every night since that afternoon at the bus stop, the image of those little girls haunted him. 2 faces that mirrored his own childhood photos. Their small, brown eyes, their curious glances, even the way they stood close to Clara like she was the center of their world. He couldn't forget. He didn't want to forget. Clara had vanished 7 years ago, after their relationship ended in flames. She had always been honest, kind, and full of life. But in a single moment of pride and fear, Julian had accused her of betrayal, without proof, without a second thought. He'd believed a co-worker's lies and let his pride control him. And Clara? She left without another word. Now she had 2 daughters, and Julian was sure they were his. But how? How could he not have known? The next morning, Julian waited outside the elementary school nearest the bus stop. He felt ridiculous, standing, in a suit that suddenly felt too sharp for the moment. He watched parents drop off their kids. A bell rang, children laughed, and teachers guided them inside. Then he saw her. Clara, wearing jeans and a simple navy coat, was walking the same 2 girls toward the front gate. The girls held lunch boxes and chatted happily. Julian's chest tightened. He didn't approach them, not yet. He waited until Clara walked back alone. When she saw him, she stopped cold. "You're following me now," she said, her voice low and guarded. "I had to talk to you," Julian replied. "Please, Clara, just give me a minute." She crossed her arms. "You don't deserve a minute." "I know, but I'm asking anyway." Clara sighed. "You have 30 seconds. Julian took a breath. "Are they mine?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes were full of old hurt, and for a moment, she looked like she might cry. "Yes," she finally said. "They're yours." The words hit Julian like a wave. He had imagined hearing them, but nothing could prepare him for the truth. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "You made yourself very clear, Julian," she snapped. "You called me a liar, a gold digger. You ended everything in front of hundreds of people. I lost everything that night. My home, my job, even one of the babies." Julian stared at her, stunned. "What?" "I was carrying triplets," she said, her voice shaking. "After the stress of what you did, I lost one. I moved away. I changed my name. I built a life for the girls without you." Julian's legs felt weak. He leaned against the school fence. "Clara, I didn't know. I was lied to. You thought I was using you," she finished coldly. "You never even gave me a chance to explain." "I was wrong," Julian said. "I was scared and stupid. I know that now." Clara's expression softened just a little. "So why are you here now, after all these years?" Julian hesitated. "Because I don't have much time left," Clara frowned. "What does that mean?" He looked down. "I'm sick, a brain condition. It's terminal. I've got a couple of months, maybe less." Clara stared at him in disbelief. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I don't want to take them from you," Julian added quickly. I want to know them. Please." Clara didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, "The girls don't know who you are. I told them their father wasn't around, that he left before they were born." "That's not entirely wrong," Julian said bitterly. "I wasn't trying to protect them from you," Clara said softly. I was trying to protect them from the truth, from pain. Julian nodded. Let me meet them. Just once. I won't say anything unless you're there. I'll follow your rules. She looked at him closely, trying to decide if he meant it. Finally, she said, Tomorrow, after school, 1 hour. That's all. He exhaled slowly. Thank you. The next afternoon, Julian met them in a quiet park near the school. He brought a blanket, juice boxes, and a stack of coloring books he'd picked out with care. Clara stood behind the girls as they approached. Lila, June, she said gently. This is Mr. Julian. He's an old friend of mine. The girls looked at him with shy interest. June, the more outgoing one, waved. Hi. Julian smiled. Hi. I brought some crayons. Want to draw with me? Lila clung to her mother's hand but nodded slowly. They sat together on the grass, coloring quietly. June chatted about her favorite cartoons. Lila was quieter, more thoughtful. At one point, Julian said, Those are beautiful drawings. You're both very talented. Lila looked up. Are you Mommy's boyfriend? Julian smiled. No, I'm just someone who cares about her very much. The hour passed quickly. Clara watched the whole time, arms crossed but not interfering. When it was time to go, Julian stood slowly. Thank you, he said to Clara. For this. She nodded, but her eyes were troubled. Don't get their hopes up. Julian looked at the girls, then back at her. I'm not here to hurt them. Or you. I just want to do one right thing. Before I run out of time. Julian started showing up twice a week, just as Clara had allowed. Always on time, always calm, always respectful. Each time he brought something new. Puzzles, picture books, crayons, or simple board games. He didn't try too hard. He didn't push. He just showed up. That, it turned out, was the most powerful thing he could do. June warmed up quickly. She liked talking. She liked asking questions. She even started calling him Mr. J after their third meeting. Lila, on the other hand, was more guarded. She often kept close to Clara, watching Julian from behind her sister or clutching her favorite stuffed turtle like a shield. Julian understood that look. He remembered wearing it as a child, quiet, unsure, always wondering if he was going to be let down again. His father had been in and out of his life and eventually just gone. Julian didn't want to repeat that story, but the truth was, time was not on his side. The headaches were getting worse. His vision blurred sometimes, especially at night. He had moments where he couldn't remember words, where his hands trembled too much to hold a juice box steady. He never mentioned it to Clara, but she saw it. She was watching closely, even if she didn't say anything. One morning, a thick envelope arrived at Julian's apartment. Inside were reports from a private investigator. Julian had hired him quietly, not to dig into Clara's past, but to understand her present. The folder made Julian's chest tighten. Clara worked 3 jobs. Mornings at a clinic as a receptionist, afternoons cleaning offices, weekends at a bakery. It barely covered their rent. She was exhausted. But what broke Julian the most was a note from the girls' school. Lila had dyslexia, severe. She was struggling with reading, and her confidence was falling apart. The school had recommended special therapy, $300 a week. Clara couldn't afford it, so Lila fell further behind. Julian stared at Lila's school photo. She wore a pink headband, her eyes downcast, her mouth a straight line. She looked tired, even in a picture. And suddenly, Julian saw himself. He had struggled too. He'd only made it through school because his mother had secretly paid for extra tutors. His daughter didn't have that. Not yet. That weekend, during their scheduled visit at the park, Julian arrived early. He stayed hidden behind a tree, watching Clara and the girls from a distance. They looked like a family. June was laughing. Lila sat on the bench beside Clara, slowly sounding out words from a picture book. It was hard to hear, but Julian caught the words, "Try again, sweetie, you're doing your best." That's when he heard Lila say quietly, "I'm not smart like June." Julian's heart cracked. Clara looked down at her. "You are smart. Your brain just works in a different way." "That's all." Lila didn't look convinced. When Julian finally joined them, June ran over right away. Lila offered only a small wave. Clara gave him a look that said she had noticed something new. He was moving slower. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine," he said with a smile, but his voice didn't carry the strength it used to. They played a quiet board game together under the trees. Julian tried to help Lila read a card from the deck, but her face turned red. "I can't read good," she muttered. Julian looked at her kindly. "Neither could I, you know." Lila blinked. "Really? Really?" he nodded. "The letters used to dance around on the page like they were having a party without me." Lila gave a small smile. It was the first time she looked directly at him without hesitation, Clara noticed. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Julian began reading with Lila in small steps, just a sentence at a time, then a page. He celebrated every tiny win like she'd won a gold medal. Slowly, Lila started sitting closer. She started bringing her own books. Still, she never called him anything more than Mr. J. June, though, had started calling him Julian Daddy. She said it once by accident, while showing him a picture she drew. Then she laughed nervously and asked, "Is it okay if I call you that?" Julian's voice caught in his throat. He nodded. "It's perfect," he whispered. But behind the smiles, Julian knew his body was betraying him faster than he could hide. Some days he couldn't get out of bed without help. His handwriting had started to slip. He dropped things more often. Clara, being observant and careful, didn't miss any of it. One rainy afternoon, after he had to sit down 3 times during their short visit, Clara walked him to his car and said, "You need to tell me the truth." Julian didn't argue this time. He handed her the hospital folder he'd been keeping in the glove compartment. Clara didn't open it right away. She just stared at him for a long moment. "They deserve to know you," she said quietly. "Even if it's only for a little while." Julian nodded, trying to hide the emotion in his eyes. "I'll be here as long as I can," he said, "and I'll do whatever it takes." Clara looked down at the folder, then at him. "You already are," and for the first time in years, Julian felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Julian's world was shrinking. The park visits had become short, indoor meetups. His legs no longer worked well. Clara had rented a wheelchair for him and placed a soft chair in the corner of her small apartment where he could rest. Every visit now felt like a gift, one he tried to unwrap slowly so it would last just a little longer. He didn't look the same. His face had lost its color, and his voice grew weaker by the day. But the girls, especially June, didn't seem to mind. She sat close to him, often reading out loud or showing him her drawings. Lila still stayed quiet, but something had changed. She'd begun sitting beside him during story time. Sometimes she even leaned against his arm. Julian knew time was slipping through his fingers, so he used what little strength he had left to create memories that would live beyond him. He bought a video camera. Clara wasn't sure at first, but after he explained, she agreed. He wanted to leave behind messages for the girls. Not just a goodbye, but pieces of himself for the future. Birthday wishes, graduation messages, advice for when they were lost or scared. They recorded in short sessions, only 10 minutes at a time. Julian wore a button-down shirt, though it no longer fit the way it used to. His hair was thinner and his hands shook, but when the red light blinked on, he smiled. "Hi, June. If you're watching this, you're probably about to finish high school." He told her how proud he was, how her kindness had changed his life, how her laughter made hard days easier. He told her to always chase her dreams and to never forget how her stories made him feel alive. To Lila, he spoke with even more care. "If you're watching this, maybe you've just finished reading your first chapter book by yourself." His voice cracked. "I want you to know how brave you are, how hard you've worked, And that your mind, your beautiful, brilliant mind, just works in its own special way. Between filming, Julian scribbled letters. One for each girl, one for Clara, one even for the teacher who had first noticed Lila's reading struggles. He wanted to make sure that when he was gone, there would still be words from him that could hold the people he loved. One afternoon, Clara brought out a book and sat beside him after the girls had gone to bed. Julian was quiet, his breathing, slower but steady. "I used to think forgiveness was a gift you gave someone else," she said gently, "but now I know it's a gift you give yourself." Julian turned his head toward her. "You forgave me?" Clara smiled faintly. "I'm working on it." They sat in silence for a while. Then Julian said, "I never thought I'd be lucky enough to be loved again. But those girls, they let me feel like a father." "You are their father," Clara said. That night, as Clara tucked him into the guest bed in her living room, Julian held her hand a little longer than usual. "If I don't wake up tomorrow, promise me one thing," he said. Clara nodded. "Tell them I never stopped loving them, even when I didn't know they existed." "I promise." Julian closed his eyes with a smile. He didn't wake up the next morning. The funeral was quiet, simple, just like Julian had wanted. There were no long speeches, no flashy displays. Just Clara, the girls, and a few close friends. The sun filtered through the trees as they stood by a small headstone that read, "Julian Reed, beloved father, forever remembered." June held Clara's hand tightly. Lila clutched the stuffed turtle Julian had given her. "Is he watching us now?" Lila whispered. "I believe he is," Clara said. Back at home, Clara placed Julian's letters and videos into a box marked for later. It would sit on a shelf in the closet until the girls were old enough to understand fully. But already they remembered him. June would say things like, "Julian, Daddy used to laugh like that," or, "He told me this story once." Lila drew pictures of rainbows, of books, of a man in a wheelchair smiling. Months passed. Clara got a promotion at work. Lila started reading full sentences out loud in class. June began writing her own short stories. They were healing. One Saturday morning, Clara took the girls to the cemetery with fresh flowers. The air smelled like spring. They sat on the grass beside the headstone. "I read a whole book, Julian, Daddy," Lila said proudly. "I got an A on my story about the moon," June added. Clara smiled. "We're doing okay. We miss you, but we're okay," the girls began, drawing pictures on a small notepad they had brought. Flowers, clouds, hearts. Lila drew a hand holding another, her own way of saying goodbye. Before they left, Clara placed a hand on the stone. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing up, for trying, for loving us, even when it was hard." The wind blew gently through the trees like a soft answer, and somewhere beyond the pain, the regrets, and the lost time, Julian's love lived on. Not in a tower, not in a company, not in a fortune, but in two little girls who would always remember the father who came back, just in time,